Hey everybody, thanks for coming today. Welcome to our webinar called VETRO from the get-go. So today we're going to talk about how to leverage your fiber management system of record to maximize value from day one. And we have two great team members today to walk us through that process. I'm going to introduce them to you now. We have got Andrew Eubank here on the left.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Next up, you've got Pat Edwards.
Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Hi. And Andrew's going to kick us off today. Are you ready to go, Andrew?
Let's go. Let's have some fun.
Right. Excellent.
In our presentations today, we'll demonstrate how VETRO delivers tangible value right out of the box. But first, let's take a look at a high-level overview of where the biggest impacts might be felt. Every business is different, and here at VETRO, we believe that no matter where you are in the life of your fiber network, a system of record that has been purpose-built to think like fiber and make improvements at the points where it really matters is the key to staying in control and realizing value at every stage and in every department of your business. Planning and design within VETRO is quick, efficient, and most importantly, accurate. Starting with service locations and iterating into a low-level detailed design, you'll find that by starting in VETRO and using VETRO first, it keeps your information accurate and usable. All the details from the initial design through your design walkouts to the final touches are resident in the system of record, the owner of this data. In construction projects, we have crews out building and making field decisions that change that data in some way. So when the data comes back, it has to be quickly and efficiently integrated back into the system of record in the same language that your operations team will need it for provisioning services. This is only done by having it start in your system of record first. As you begin offering services or provisioning your network, the window for maximizing revenue opens up. And as we all know, the ability to be responsive to market demand while maintaining quality becomes your goal and how you measure success. By having VETRO involved in the earliest stages, you've established the end goal, your methodologies and your language, and your window starts earlier. And then you're on to your operations phase, likely while you're busy working on expansion somewhere else in your network. So awareness of what's going on with your network, both situationally, as in, where's my stuff? And behaviorally, as in, how's my stuff working? Becomes both the challenge and the key to long-term efficiency in your business. By having VETRO involved early, your operations can be smooth. You know where your network is, you know what strands are available, and you know how to restore and integrate it as quickly as possible. And let's not forget the everyday objectives that you're probably thinking about around every project. Successfully being able to scale and repeat your projects and processes easily, enhancing productivity and team satisfaction in a constrained and ever-changing hiring environment, making sure that you retain and delight as many of your customers as possible. When you can unite all of these critical elements of your operations in one place, you can begin to see the benefits immediately, no matter what strategic phase of building your business that you're in today. Well, let's dive into the platform. Pat Edwards is going to be showing us how to set up for success within the network planning and design category. Take it away, Pat.
Thanks, Andrew. All right. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a demo today that's going to focus on the very start of that workflow. I'm going to start with the end in mind. And by that, I mean, I'm going to prepare service locations in a way that sets them up to be used by various other processes that are going to go on during the life cycle of a network from the start. They're going to be used for the planning and design of a network and costing, but eventually they're going to feed into all of the systems you're using to construct the network by being used in any as-built workflow and construction management, and then feeding into the billing system and CRM that you're using it as well. So yeah, that's the picture. So as I'm loading addresses, I'm thinking about how is this all going to get used? And how do I make sure that everyone who needs this data has a single place to go and a really consistent way of reading that data? So I'm just going to grab the screen share and I think with that, dive into the demo. So share. All right, so So this is VETRO FiberMap here. We've probably seen it before. If anyone hasn't, I'll just give a really quick rundown. I'm just using this in my web browser. So it's a fully cloud-based SaaS offering. And what I'm going to do is just really start bringing in data. So I've got a bit of a blank slate here. And I might have already had existing projects in VETRO before and set up the data schema in the way that I like it to be, that suits my organization. And so I can bring in a data set from someone else and immediately have it conform to that. So I'm just going to bring in this set of service locations in Forest City, Arkansas. And I'm going to pull it into a plan that I've just reserved for preparing some data and start that import. So that's going to bring it into a staging area of sorts. So we can bring in data in any format, in any schema, really. So I uploaded a GeoJSON. You could be bringing in a KML or a shapefile, but it's all going to get converted into a specially protected VETRO layer. And that layer is going to have all sorts of benefits like ensuring a consistent format and protecting key attributes and permissions. So the next step in the workflow is really just using the update data workflow, where I find that set of address locations or service locations, and I pick the service location layer here. And I have the opportunity to do some mapping. So in this case here, I changed the schema a little bit just to demonstrate this, where we have the building type. I've changed the name of that. So let's say someone else has called this data type of building. Our schema calls it building type, and we just have a really easy way of mapping that over so that when we import this data, it's going into our standard schema. So when I transfer that, it all gets pulled over, and now we see that these service locations will show up in the plan that I prepared here. If I turn on that layer, and it's going to refresh. That didn't show up. Projects and plans. I might have chosen the wrong plan to do that, but I've got another one to bring in. I'll just try that one more time. Preparation layers. Oops. All right, here we go. Add data. Data preparation, start import. So I think what I did there is I added it to the wrong plan. And that just meant that I wasn't showing that particular plan. So just go through that workflow one more time. Update data. Select my service location layer. And then make sure I've got that building type correct. Transfer. And because I'm doing a live demo, this just isn't going to show up for me right now, but that's okay. I prepared, here's one I prepared earlier. So this is the set of service locations we're trying to use here. So we just get centered again. So the number of units I've got here is an empty field, right? So we haven't collected that data yet. What I'm going to show is how we can still use this data to do some initial high-level planning. And we can use the analysis tools in VETRO to do that. So if I just jump over to the zones layer. So the zones layer is a really useful and powerful layer. Andrew's going to show a little bit of how it can get used later on with inheriting status from the zones and things like that. I'm just going to use this zone layer to perform some basic analysis. So I have my set of service locations and I have my set of road center lines. And if I just jump into the tabulate tool, I can select the polygons on the map, and then I can just choose that I want to analyze the service locations, and I want to analyze the road center lines, and count them all up. And I can get a really quick estimate of the number of subscribers in my area and the road center lines as well. And if I want to go a step further, if I've set up some basic costs in my instance, I can do this repeatedly for different polygons, but just say apply, and it'll give me the cost. So I put in some, I think I use like $98,000 per road mile, $60 per month revenue sort of cost, just to get some basic numbers. So that's a way that we can really quickly start getting value out of these service locations early on in the process. But the thing that I really want to focus on a little bit today is a hidden feature of VETRO a lot of people don't really see. It's called the VETRO ID, and that's going to be a key thing. When I showed that that slide at the start where the service locations are in the middle communicating to the BSS and the OSS and the instruction management system, all of that relies on us having a global ID that we call the VETRO ID. And what it looks like is just this random string of letters and numbers here, which is very, always going to be unique. So that if I go to bring in other data in a different schema, it has a common, it always knows that it's going to overwrite the data at that particular location. So one use case for this is if I go out and do some field verification of the number of units in my network. So you can see here, all of the number of units are set to NA. We haven't recorded that data yet. So I might have someone integrated with a field tool, or I might have someone go out and create a KML. It doesn't really matter how we bring this in, as long as we have the VETRO ID to refer to it. So I'll go in and just grab that first data set. This service location is V1. So I'm bringing it in as a GeoJSON. This could be a KML, it could be a shapefile, or it could be coming in through our API is another common way that people take advantage of this VETRO ID. So I bring it into that staging area in the imports, and then I use the update data workflow. And I'm going to show a nice little feature of the update data workflow that helps to prevent errors. So if I go to map this service locations layer over to this service location layer, I want to find the building type, right? So that's already mapped here, and you can see that it's always going to be validating to make sure that the number of units is in this text format, and this one is in the text format as well. So now if I hit transfer, I used the wrong layout. Let's try that again. Add data using the V2 layer. I'm pulling that into this phase 3 plan. And now update data. So here's that that error I was trying to find to show how we can override this. We can see that if I go to try to map this column over to this column here, it's not going to let me, and that's because the type of these columns is different. So I've caught an error, right? Someone in the field has converted their data into a different format. So I'm just going to go back to the attribute table, and I can fix that in VETRO really easily. I can just scroll over to that column in the data set that they've uploaded and just switch the type of that type of that field. So I'll just customize the field type, and we've got all sorts of different field types we can be using. In this case, we're actually using a text field. And now when I go to use that, it's going to move straight over. And you can see it's automatically matched. It's detected that these strings are close enough, so I can really quickly move through that workflow. Now when I hit transfer, we're going to see those number of units fill up like that. So to do that, I haven't had to copy any data. I haven't had to create, I named my data set V1, right? And we're not going to have, someone from our engineering company asking what's the most updated version of this? Is it V1 or is it V1 final? They're always just going to go to the layer list in VETRO and this particular plan and know that that's the most up-to-date version of the data. One final thing, just to show how this works with some other systems. If I've created another view of this data using our shared view functionality, and that looks like this. So I've got this all styled based on whether these service locations are active or not. And if I go through to bring in a new data set, so this is representing what might come from your construction management system. As they're doing their as-builds and ingesting all of that, they are marking that these service locations are now active. And so I'm just sort of simulating that by using the update data workflow. So bring this layer in. And I'm going to be changing the subscriber status here so I can see if that's been mapped over correctly. And in the map that I'm using in VETRO, active is green. And if I hit refresh on this page, we can see that they've turned green. So this is a shared view. This could be viewed by anyone. And it's a really useful way to share the status of projects. And what I've done there is just use the update data workflow that's using that VETRO ID, that global ID, and showing how that data can propagate to all the other systems. So just going back to this deck a little bit, I'm showing how we could have our service locations feed into our BSS OSS or come back from that. That VETRO ID is the common element with all of those. I've also got on here the BDC reporting. So we have a new feature coming out that I just want to call attention to, the network dashboard, and that's going to make BDC reporting a little bit easier. So we have this network dashboard page here where I've got the service location layer broken out by all the different census blocks in Arkansas. And this will always be behind a login page. So your finance team or your reporting team can be looking at this page. And as you add new service locations from your as-built process and your provisioning process, as they get added to a plan and marked as ready to serve, you can go in here and look at how many service locations you've got in each of these polygons. And then you can just export that at the top of this page here, export that data, and that looks like this. For every census block, I've got the number of service locations in it. And if someone goes out in the field and says, oh, I've actually switched on, 2 more service locations, they can add that to the map. This network dashboard will automatically figure that out and add it to the count for this polygon here. So every time your reporting team goes to the network dashboard, they're going to have the most up-to-date view of the network. So yeah, with that, I'll hand it back to Andrew. And let Andrew's going to take what I've set up here with the service locations and take advantage of setting up this data really early in the workflow.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate that. Let's take a quick look at our slide deck one more time. So imagine this. You've set the standards and you've established the language that your team will use. You've built your network, and with our suite of incredibly powerful digitizing, splicing, and connectivity tools, you've moved from a high level or back of the napkin concept to a low level design and onwards into construction and operations. So now you're in money mode and you need quick replicable success. By starting in VETRO first, you're not having to race against the clock and try to fix data that doesn't quite fit your operational paradigm while trying to get a return on all that money you just spent. It's like you paid with cash instead. By starting with VETRO, you don't have to pay a data debt. You're not just getting to ROI quicker, you're maximizing it. Your important records like geospatial, infrastructure, and ready for service data already lives in the right place. Need to send out a marketing campaign? Quickly determine the locations that are serviceable without having a second guess or send through a time-consuming engineering review. Hooking up drops? You don't have to upload a network, try and sift through unclear records, or try and figure out what you serve and who is serviceable. You started your journey in VETRO. You know your fiber counts, your available strands, and your serviceable locations in the area. Not to mention, you've already got great organic expansion opportunities. Other people are starting to hear about your efforts. Maybe there's a data center outside of your pre-planned footprint, and they want to get to contract fast. Not to worry, you've got your network strand counts and operational processes set up to make the push to hook them up effortless. Your customer service, sales, marketing, and senior leadership can all look at your source of truth and know how to view it in whatever way will help their particular vertical. You can speak confidently and quickly to where services are and will be, choose to target particular areas for sales or marketing, and share statuses on a project with a simple shared view to your stakeholders. By starting with VETRO first, you've established the language you'll use for your entire life cycle of your infrastructure and set the groundwork up for major success. Let's take a look at a network that began life in VETRO. Perhaps it spent some time in a construction management system, or went out into the field and received red lines and attribute changes through field verification. No matter the journey your data took to get here, it's paying deep, deep dividends by having started life in VETRO. Let's look at how, and I'm gonna take over the screen share and open up a VETRO window now to show you. All right. So let's picture this. We can see that during the design phase, we drew out our network. It's been through construction, or maybe parts of it have. And we decided to draw out zones around these areas that were going to be built. And we can see on the left-hand side here that those zones are denoted as planned or as built or design or construction or something else entirely. These zones have different statuses, right? These denote different statuses that we can toggle between. And by clicking on this zone and moving into edit mode, I can very quickly toggle those statuses. So I'm going to change this one perhaps from planned and save it. And now I'm going to move it back to as built. Now the attributes on these zones or the status on these zones can set up to be inherited by the service locations within those zones. So if you remember, we imported these service locations early on. And right now I'm just looking at MDUs. I'm going to click on that service location and it's going to show me the status of that particular service location as inherited by the zone. We here at VETRO call that attribute inheritance. And in a construction project, perhaps we change that to happen just as soon as the crews have tested the final splice before this service location, reducing our time to revenue drastically. That location's ready to go, all from a simple change to the polygon that it lives in. In fact, all of them in that zone are. And your customer service team can simply search the address to determine if it's ready or not, or view the zone itself. Because your data began its journey with VETRO first, your team's been empowered to follow and understand the changes made and how the network's been affected. VETRO's powerful open API also makes it easy to integrate with your OSS, or easier. Imagine your engineer changing the status of this zone, and all of that data pushes to the service location and out to your OSS. Or imagine your installer finishing an install, and that data gets pushed into VETRO to show that location is active or lit. Our strong, accessible interface paired with your key data living in VETRO makes that possible. Let's take another look at a few ways to view this information via VETRO's shared view functionality. So Pat showed this a little bit, but we might get to that by clicking this little paper airplane icon, where we can choose to give this a title, a subtitle, and we can choose the layers and the projects and plans to show. Now, for the sake of time, I went ahead and set up a few of these. The first one might be something that we want to show our executives. And that's just a quick visual of the zones and the statuses that they're in. And this comes with a legend over here to the right-hand side, where you can see what's planned, what's an as-built, what's design or construction, and you can toggle those accordingly. Any layer in VETRO can be chosen and shown in whatever styling you feel is best for whatever stakeholders you're presenting to. Any layer shape, color, or label are all manipulable in VETRO. Let's move on to a second view, perhaps for your field engineers. Or your crew leader on an ongoing project. Here we can quickly see, using that same legend, what's aerial, what's underground, and what counts are, and more. This can be shared with whomever you choose, whether internal or perhaps an external subcontractor as well. This can be a great way to have a portable, dynamic map. Remember, also as changes happen, this map will update accordingly. Perhaps we need to move a line across this street. In fact, let's test it. Let's go look at this lateral over by Smith Stadium. We can see that it's in the Forest City, Arkansas plan in the phase 2 project, phase 2 plan. So I'm going to edit this. And I know that we want it to actually follow the curve of this road a little bit based on the feedback from our team. And I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to go back to my shared view. I'm going to refresh it. And I can see that change happening just seconds after having made it in the platform. And let's move on to some deeper functionality as well. Through our AWP, or analysis with polygon tools, all of this analysis and deeper data review is made possible by your data having started its life journey in VETRO. Here, you can click on an existing polygon. I'm going to exit out of edit mode and move into these analysis tools. And I'm going to tabulate. I'm going to click this polygon on the map, and I can either draw a new polygon or select an existing polygon. And I just want to learn the counts of service locations post-field audit that are actually in the zone. I'm going to hit apply, and I can see that within the north zone, there are 426 service locations. Or perhaps you could very quickly figure out how many are active customers within that zone. So I'm going to start over. I'm going to go down to this yellow area. I'm going to tabulate, and here you can get a little peek at some of our advanced queries as well. Select this zone, and I'm going to create an advanced query. Remember, my target is the service locations, and I want to know what the status of my subscribers are. We'll call this active subscribers. And it looks like I have 397 active subscribers in the Southwest polygon already. That's phenomenal. We're doing really well on this project. All of this can be downloaded as well via this download button, giving you a CSV file with the results of your query. Lastly, it might be important to view how much footage you have in a particular zone or area. Let's look at our lateral footages really quickly within multiple areas. So I'm going to select these two polygons. I'm going to target my lateral layer. And I want to know the length of my laterals within both of these polygons. It'll break it out. Here's my north polygon and my southwest. And here's the footage accordingly of all the laterals within these polygons. You can see that it quickly gives us an idea of how much is within each zone area. So we talked a little bit about organic expansion. For instance, let's say that the Forest City Country Club, I'm going to turn on Street View just so we can get a fun little view of that. The Forest City Country Club has called in, and they're willing to shell out $250,000 to get connectivity, and they need it now. They heard about how good your network is. By performing a route to network within VETRO, we can quickly ballpark the route our expansion might take, save it, and get a rough cost analysis within seconds. Let's do that by opening up our analysis tools and choosing route to network. And you know what? While they were asking, two others asked as well. We have the country club, the church, and we also have the Veterans Empowerment Services. Now, our costs for boring have been a little more expensive recently, so we're going to have our cost per road length adjusted accordingly. And we want to know how much it costs to get back to a cabinet, or a central office, or fiber access terminal, or a handhole, or a splice closure, or perhaps a pedestal, any point of access within your network. And I'm going to calculate. And you can see how quickly it created these lines going back to your network as well as buffers. And you can see that you have the option to save the route and the buffers, or just the buffers to a new or existing plan within VETRO. And your team can then review those and implement them ASAP. Let's go back and move on to long-term operations. It's vitally important to see your strands. And so for the sake of clarity, I'm going to turn off zones within my layer list. It's important to see your strands and how they're being used and what's available. Let's click on a splice case and see what's passing through that splice case. By choosing the fiber paths tool or the network analysis, or just looking at the fiber paths right here, we can see strands, circuits, reserved paths, anything passing through this splice case. By beginning in VETRO, your team's been able to create the paths for each of your customers in your design phase, and they can view the trace of where it begins, ends, and what it passes through also. Let's choose one of these circuits and take a look at it. By clicking on the circuit, it shows me the A and Z, where that circuit starts and ends. I can also look at the trace, which shows me the access terminals it passes through, the tube and the strand, and the fiber number as well. Looks like this one begins at our OLT up at the top. Let's go back. We can also view how fiber is allocated along our backbone, or any fiber line, by simply clicking it and viewing the fiber allocation. Let's look at our backbone and choose fiber allocation. All of this information can be generated into efficient, easy to use reports as well. So what if a backhoe comes to town? Let's do one more operational exercise. An OTDR view. I'm going to exit out of this. And we'll imagine that our backbone got cut. And our tech said it was about 1,367 feet from the splice case near All Care EMS. And he took his shot on fiber 158. Let's hook it up by clicking on the splice case, and we're going to connect to fiber 158. We'll enter our distance. We'll hit calculate, and it's going to show us the circuit that's affected, as well as anything else affected along that path. We can generate a report, or we can click on that circuit and view the trace as well. This information is exportable. This wraps up the demo portion of our webinar. But as you can see, it only scratches the surface of VETRO's full but easy to use functionality. So make sure to reach out if you want to see more or have any questions. At this point, I think you should be seeing a poll pop up here pretty shortly. Let's go ahead and get that answered. And this would be a great time to move into Q&A as well.
Here you are.
Thanks. By starting with VETRO first, you can realize value across your whole chain. You're setting yourself up for success in network and design with our powerful tools and a shared common language, creating the quick path to success for anyone who needs to view, use, or have access to your most important data. VETRO's powerful tools, permissions, and open API make it easy to carve out views, assign permissions for every one of your departments who needs a finger on the pulse of what's going on, as well as pair with your existing workflows and tools within construction, handling changes and visibility to those changes with ease. As your project comes to completion, you now have the ability to begin operating and monetizing your network. From design to construction, through provisioning and operations, VETRO gives you one place that serves as your source of truth for fiber management and everything that comes along with it. And if you have an existing network that started life outside of the platform, VETRO makes it possible to ingest and use also. Our ability to work with a variety of formats, and our dedicated services team will work with you to get you into operational shape, ensuring everything you do in the future is top of the line. So don't wait to make a move until your backlog is miles high. Frustrated technicians, an inability to sell after having spent money, and slower return on investment can be a thing of the past. Choose VETRO first to maximize every portion of your life cycle. And that's really all the great content that we have to show you today, but I think we've got a little bit of time left for Q&A if we so desire. With that, I'll be quiet and turn it back over to Victoria.
Yes, we do have a ton of Q&A. Actually, I've got a huge queue of questions, but I'm going to pause here for a second in case anybody wants some VETRO socks or a VETRO Yeti mug and coffee. We're doing a survey. Scan that QR code and answer a couple questions, and we'll stick you into a drawing for some cool prizes. If you want to get in touch, here's our information. We are going to spend the last 10-ish minutes, try to get you out of here early. Everybody's time is really valuable right now. It's so busy.